The Vergas Show is brought to you by Spanky Stone Hearth, casual fine dining on beautiful Rose Lake. Vergas State Bank, your locally owned community full-service bank. Vergas Event Center for gatherings large or small, including weddings. Vergas Liquor Store, where all the profits profit Vergas.
Make the right call. Call Hanson's, the most trusted name in plumbing and heating.
Hi, welcome to the Vergas Show. I'm Sherry Hanson. Thanks for joining me today. I'm here today with Caleb Munson and Carol May. We're at St. John's Church, and we got some exciting things to tell you about. We've got a great speaker that's coming in for an event that the LWML is going to be having. And Carol, will you tell us when that is and what's going to be happening?
We have a zone rally, which means there's about 7 area churches that gather, and we are gathering at St. John's Lutheran Church on April 25th. And Caleb will be speaking at 10 o'clock. And Lutheran Women's, LWML stands for Lutheran Women's Missionary League, and it is part of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Okay, so a zone rally here in Vergas at St. John's Church, and you've brought in a great speaker, and we're going to hear a little bit more from Caleb in a minute here. And so what can only the Lutheran Church women can come to that, or can you get everybody there?
We start at 9 with registration, and then we have devotions 9:30 to 10, and then we have our speaker, then we have a break, and then we have our business meeting, and then we have lunch. So people probably are more interested in just coming from 10 to 11 to hear Caleb than our business meeting, but anybody is welcome to attend.
And at any time. And this is St. John's Lutheran. It's in Vergas. It's right on Scharf Avenue. You just turn by the baseball field and
or
all
the
you
pickleball.
or the pickleball field, whichever sport that is yours.
Yes.
But that sounds really exciting. And what's the date again?
It's Tuesday. It's the last Tuesday, April 25th.
April 25th. All right, Carol. Well, this sounds really great. And then Caleb, you're the key guy on this, right? Yeah. And so I know that the Zone Rally has invited you to come in. And so I'm sure it's not just because of your good looks. You've got a message to tell, right?
Yes, absolutely. So.
All right. I want to hear about that message. What is your mission?
Yeah, so a little bit about our mission and what we do is my wife and I are U.S.-based missionaries, and so we fight the issue of human trafficking all around the U.S. And so a lot of people, when they think of human trafficking, they think of this issue around the world.
Mm-hmm. Somewhere, some other country,
right.
We don't have to worry about
exactly,
it, right?
Because then it's not my problem, right? In Thailand, whatever country people think of when they think of human trafficking. But what we've realized over the last couple of years is that this is a real problem here in our country.
So that's a question I have for you, Caleb, then before you tell me a little bit more. And I'm known for interrupting, so I'm sorry.
All good.
But Vergas.
Yep.
Do we have to worry about human trafficking here?
Yes, I would say absolutely. And for a lot of people, they might think, but this is a small town.
It
right?
is. I know. Yeah, things like that don't happen in small town Vergas.
No. And we're not really close to a big city. You know, it's kind of out here in the middle of nowhere. So
maybe what you need to do is explain human trafficking to us.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. When people think of human trafficking, not only do they think of another country, but they also think of abductions and kidnappings, because that's what they think of. You know, because of the movies that we've seen, the news, how it's portrayed sometimes. But really, what it looks like is where somebody's being forced to do something against their will, and somebody else is getting value out of that. And so it's not always money. We have situations where it's a lot of other things, and it's not always a stranger. You know, sometimes it's somebody very close to the individual, whether it's a kid, whether it's a young adult, that is forcing them to do something they don't want to do, and then receiving that value out of it. And
so yeah, you take away the Hollywood part of it, and it's really real, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, and because there can be just a lot of different situations.
Yep.
How did you get into this, Caleb?
Great question. I get that question a lot because it's kind of...
Well, then you should have a pat answer, right?
Right? Because it's kind of this thing of how does somebody from small town Minnesota, a local guy...
Yeah, give me a little bit of your background.
Yeah, I get into that. So I grew up locally, a little bit in Vergas, and then otherwise in Wadena, just down the road. And so great family that I grew up in. I was a youth pastor at the Frazee, one of the churches in Frazee, Harvest Church there, for 3 years. And so how does somebody like me get into this? It kind of goes back to a couple years ago when I was in college, first learning about this issue. Realizing that that's what's happening, and for the first time in my life, knowing that it happened. seeing this movie portrayed in a real way of what's really going on. And then over the next probably 5 years, hearing stories from one of my close friends of what they were seeing on the front lines of this issue, of different stories, heartbreaking stories of kids being recovered, and just eventually got to the point where I couldn't get away from it. It was this burden that God had put on my heart to realize that I could do something about it. And so then in 2019, I went on a missions trip down to Las Vegas. I thought it was going to be a 5-day trip, be done, come back, be a youth pastor.
Yeah, I did it, yep.
Right, check it off the list. I did a little trip. But through that process, God put faces on my mind that I still can see to this day, of victims that we connected with, that we encountered, not knowing where they've ended up, not knowing if they ever got the help that they need. Came back and really felt God put it on my heart to say, I need to do this full time, that he was calling me to jump into this. So.
I heard you say something about you prayed a dangerous prayer.
Yes. Yep.
Explain that.
Yeah, so during that process, coming home, I was sitting in my office at the church that I was at, and just really kind of praying about this issue of human trafficking and what was happening. And I remember in my office praying to God one of these dangerous prayers, which I define as, you pray these prayers not thinking it has to do with you, but then God says you're the answer to it. And so I remember praying just, God, why don't you do something about this issue?
Why don't you do something? And then he says, why don't you do something?
Isn't that funny how that works?
I love it.
God likes to use us to change the world. Whatever that looks like, whether in my case fighting human trafficking, whatever it might be. And so sometimes when we pray those prayers, we have to realize we're the answer.
Right.
And so that was that moment with me of realizing.
Yeah, a dangerous prayer. I had never heard that before until you said that, but it's so true, because any time that you send a prayer out, you got to be ready for what's going to be required of you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and you've taken that step. And so, Caleb, put it into terms for the ladies at the LWML zone, for just people in the community. What can we be doing?
Yeah, what can you be doing to fight human trafficking? Everyone has a part. Everyone has a part to play in addressing this issue. First of all, it has to do with being aware. Like the event that's coming up, if there's ever an event in your community that you're able to attend about this issue, go, because we can think human trafficking is one thing until we really get educated and understand what it is. We're not going to be focusing on the right things. So being aware, because then we have a community of people that isn't going to let it happen in their community, because they're aware of what to look for. The other thing is, if you're a parent, you're a grandparent, be involved in your kids' lives, especially online. A lot of kids are running rampant online with no checks and balances.
Our social media has changed the way that we have to look at things, hasn't it?
Yep. And I tell people, if you have a kid that is on social media, there is an online predator trying to talk to your kid right now. And that's not just something made up. There's a reality, case after case that we work. It begins of a grooming process on social media. So be involved in your kids' lives. If they have phones, be aware of what's going on. So
how do people get a hold of you to do some speaking, or do you have some information out there of where you are doing some information besides the zone rally, which we hopefully people will be coming to?
Right. Best spot to get a hold of me is to send me an email, which should be caleb@operationforfreedom.org. You can also go to operationforfreedom.org. That's our website of what we have co-founded over the last couple of years of what we do, and you can contact us there. We would love to hear from you. And if you have somewhere for us to speak, or you just want more information and getting involved, if you want to support what we do, you can connect with us there.
So Operation for Freedom.
Yep.
How did you come about that name?
Yeah, so me and one of my best friends that I work with now, we started this ministry, what we were doing, and throughout the process realized we had to start something to kind of do everything underneath, just to make it easier. And so it really came down to, yes, I mean, you need a name. And so it really came down to this idea of everything we do is an operation. It's kind of military-like. We're not military at all. We don't try to be. But it's this idea of an operation to bring freedom. So everything we're doing is one more day, one more outreach, one more event that we're connecting with victims.
So that goes right with what's your mission statement?
Exactly.
Yes,
Yep.
and so that's awesome. Operation Freedom, Caleb Munson.
Yep.
Thank you for what you're doing. It's so important, and just bringing it to our area is just really huge. I mean, this isn't a issue that we can just ignore anymore.
Yep.
And so thank you, Carol, for bringing this young man to speak at your zone rally, and tell me just a little bit more what the date and how you can get here.
Well, you can get here by coming to Vergas, the wonderful little village that is kind of hidden in the world, but is an exciting place. It's at St. John's Lutheran Church, right across from the new pickleball. You can take that road, or the baseball field. So if you cross the railroad tracks, you went too far. On Tuesday, April 25 at
10 a.m.
10 a.m. is when Caleb will be speaking, give or take a few minutes. But if you want coffee ahead of time, you can come at 9, listen to the devotions that will be done about 9:30. That's when we officially will start, and with simple business then. But we hope males and females can come, grandmas, young people, whatever.
It's a message that everybody needs to hear, isn't that correct?
Yes, it is.
And go ahead, Carol, did you have?
And so we're excited to bring him to Vergas for our rally.
All right, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Caleb. Make sure that you're there at St. John's on April 25th. You have a good day in Vergas.